And hello, welcome to Engineering Innovation. My name is David Whitney, and today we are going to discuss various types of innovation. The topic of innovation is certainly one that pertains to not only the students who take this course, but also to the entrepreneurs who are in Gainesville and elsewhere. And we are very pleased today to have join us a successful entrepreneur, a Gator engineer, a friend of mine, and and I say this truthfully, if not the best entrepreneur that Gainesville has to offer, I don't know who else is better than you. Ladies and gentlemen, Augi Lai. Augi, welcome.
Thanks.
And welcome back to campus.
Yeah.
It's great to, Augi, as the bio has indicated, Augi has 2 engineering degrees from the University of Florida and has embarked on a very successful and exciting career as an entrepreneur and an innovator, mostly around technology companies. Yep. Is that right?
That's right.
But you have interests other than just being an entrepreneur. You are an accomplished musician.
Yep.
A cellist, is that correct?
Both cello and violin.
Cello and violin. I've heard you in both small rooms and big rooms. The sound is always great. Yeah. Augi, when you address this campus and many of the students that we have who listen in via Edge, many of them are working managers in engineering capacity. One of the perspective that you provide to us is the real world.
Yeah.
So here you are as a Gator engineer, and the first question that comes to my mind that I wanted to ask you is, what is your definition of innovation?
My definition is doing something no one else has ever done before. Looking at the world not with what has been done in the past, but what hasn't been done yet. And trying to gain a unique perspective that enables you to do what they call an inventive step.
Can you expand a little bit on that, please?
Yeah. So it's very common in the industry to basically sort of see what models have worked in the past and try to emulate that. You see that a lot, especially in video games. Like, oh, Call of Duty. We just have to make a Call of Duty clone. But oftentimes, that doesn't work. And for an entrepreneur and for someone that wants to do something really exciting, it's trying to do something no one else has done.
So that you've described, your definition in some way is revolutionary innovation, is that right?
It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It can be incremental.
So more of an evolutionary approach.
Definitely evolutionary is oftentimes more prudent. But revolutionary, depending on circumstances, can be warranted.
Well, I know of Augi's work here in Gainesville. He is recognized as being a remarkably innovative entrepreneur. So I think he's being a bit modest about just making incremental steps with the type of innovation that he and his companies perform. So let's take off that modesty hat for a little bit. You have definitely impacted industries in which you have operated, whether that is a device that helps to improve the sound of a musical instrument, or in your most recent venture, which is probably going to trump all the other things that you've done, video gaming. Yeah. So I look at you and I see a revolutionary. Do you feel like you're a revolutionary?
No, I don't feel like a revolutionary, although I guess some of my products have been. Definitely ToneRight would be considered a revolutionary product.
Can you explain ToneRight for us, please?
Basically, all acoustic instruments, they take about 30 or 40 years before they start sounding really good, especially violins and guitars. They need a play-in period. You need to play on them for thousands of hours before they start sounding good. And frankly, I don't want to wait that long. So I actually started this research in college when I bought a new cello, and I invented a device that can reduce the 34 years into about a week. And there hasn't been any product ever that's done this. So, I got 3 patents on it, and I started a company called ToneRight that produces this device. That device is considered revolutionary. There hasn't been anything like that. As far as an incremental evolution, definitely my video game companies are in that. One thing that Training Entertainment has developed that no one else has ever done is cross-platform, multiplayer, co-op play. I mean, our game Dungeon Defenders, you can play it on the iPhone, iPad, Android, PC, PS3, and Xbox, and they all can play together in one universe. And no one's ever done such a massive cross-platform integration. In fact, by the end of this year, it will be on 8 platforms.
On 8 platforms.
Yeah.
When Augie first described ToneRight, there is something that I hope that all of you picked up. The comment was, "I don't want to wait for 40 years." So that was let's say that was an Augie problem. So you set out to solve that problem, time. So when I look at you, then I guess I'm looking at a guy who knows how to make time, right?
Or either make time or less sleep.
Or less sleep. So taking it down to 1 week, and you get the same resonance, the rich sound of that instrument. But that sounds more, not so, yes, the musician in you saw the problem, but the engineer in you created the solution.
Yeah.
Can you channel that inner engineer in you, please?
Basically the inner drive not to quit. That's like the inner...
Well, what did you see specifically from an engineer's eye about the problem, and then how the solution might be able to be invented and patented, as you mentioned?
Well, one thing that helps with engineering or designing is to literally just forget what everyone else is doing. This is not necessarily its tone right, but like a good example is some of the vision processing research I used to do. And I just read all the papers on image stabilization or whatever. And what that did actually was collude my thinking, and it actually corrupted my thinking. And to come up with the solutions that I did, I literally had to like dump everything that I learned before and start fresh with an open mind. And start from scratch, and you come up with solutions that are very unique and revolutionary in that sense.
And yet your training with 2 engineering degrees from the University of Florida, your training had taught you certain skills that you probably as a student thought, well, I'll always rely on these skills, or I'll always use the same approach. And I'm hearing you say, if I'm interpreting it correctly, that maybe you had to forget a little or a lot, or you had to step completely out of your comfort zone, or somehow you had to embrace the new.
Yeah, basically. I think one thing engineering has taught me is it's not what you know that's important. It's your ability to learn or learn new things that's really important.
And using an engineer's thought processes and maybe some learning frameworks for that?
It definitely going to school really helped you do that.
Now you just mentioned, but you didn't go into any detail about your vision processing, was that the genesis for Acceleron?
Yeah. So
Please tell us about Acceleron.
So
this is yet another company for those of you keeping score at home. We're up to 3.
Well, actually, it all started with the first startup I joined. So I just graduated UF and put my resume out there. I had some pretty big offers from Western Digital and Wilcoxon and General Dynamics. But the fourth company was really interesting. It was a small aerospace startup called Peoria. And when I first walked into their lab, it was just 2 engineers and just electrical equipment to the ceiling. And it was just almost comical. It was like I just came back from Phoenix, and there was like satellites hanging from the ceiling ready to be shot into space, and I was going to be working on that stuff. And then here are these 2 guys with just junk everywhere. But after a while, it just sunk in. This is how most companies get started. This is how Apple got started. This is how all the big companies got started. So I was like, I'm young. Why not? Let's give it a shot. And I learned everything about entrepreneurship from that experience, from the 2.5 years I worked at Peoria. And in Peoria, what I did was vision processing research that went into their cameras and vision processing software. And I left Peoria, started ToneRight, but ToneRight was great, wonderful. My 9 to 5 was beautiful, building that company up. But I still miss programming a lot. I still miss doing the research I used to do. So I started going back into my vision processing research and wrote a bunch of really interesting algorithms, includes stabilization, template tracking, and a number of other algorithms. And eventually I got a working relationship with the UAV program in the Air Force in Eglin, and I started doing co-op research with them. I would write software for them, they would test it out and give me feedback. And I was actually gave 2 lectures in front of a room full of PhDs on what my algorithm did and how they could use it for their own stuff. And what was the question again?
I don't know. I love the story. Take it wherever you want.
So, basically, I was doing all that stuff. It was a lot of fun. Wasn't a lot of money, but that's government work for you unless you land a huge grant. And then I started having a dialogue with some video game developers, and I came up with a pretty clever idea of incorporating vision processing into video games. I actually have an API that I wrote that pretty much does 60 to 80% of what the Xbox Kinect can do, but with just a webcam. And started doing that, and then about a year and a half ago, a bunch of developers from a studio here in town left, and they were looking for their next big gig. They were thinking about moving out to California or just taking jobs randomly. And I was like, why don't we just start our own game studio, another game studio here in town, and do it ourselves.
So again, I've counted 3 companies. Augi is what is referred to as a serial entrepreneur, and unabashed optimist, and a technology junkie. I mean, all of those very much are appropriate. The technology companies that you've created have been, for me, a business person, they've just been mind-boggling. I've seen the videos that you've used with with Acceleron and the tracking that performs, and I still don't believe it. I always thought that there was something that was just a made-up video. I've also seen what you've done with the video games and how you've incorporated that. So it seems like it's a very additive process. Everything you use one technology after the other as a building block. Is that a strategy?
You could say that.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So I guess all my experiences through my life, through music and engineering, I use them to incorporate into the various companies I built. Like ToneRight was basically my experience being a musician, a problem posed by being a musician, and then a solution that I came up with being an engineer. And of course, Acceleron is just my love for mathematics and algorithms, basically. And then video games is, again, sort of a passion because I used to play video games nonstop. In fact, I think my GPA is probably 0.25 points lower because of video games. And
students take note, please.
What I love to do, and just finding companies to sort of address my wants. So it's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you love to do? And finding companies or creating companies to address those issues. So
solving problems,
yeah,
providing solutions.
Solving problems, because the problem is I like doing these things.
Yeah.
So creating companies to solve my needs.
Well, one thing that you haven't said, but I know this to be every minute of every day that you are alive, is you have fun.
Yeah, that's very key. One Well, one of the joys of a startup company, and one of the musts of a startup company, you have to make it fun. You have to make it fun for both you and your employees, because everybody's going to be working 60 to 8-hour weeks, and everybody will be working, less than industry pay. So you basically have to pay people with smiles. And that's where the perpetual optimist has to be in the entrepreneur. And you see this a lot in Silicon Valley, this perpetual optimism. Even though you've, let's say, failed, like one of your companies goes bankrupt or something, the ability to turn around and start a new company and sort of forgive and forget that is a very important concept in entrepreneurship.
So there's the two items that Augie just mentioned. I think you heard it, as did I. Pay people with smiles. Interesting. My landlord does require cash. But maybe I'll smile a little bit nicer, bigger at him. And the second is about the failure part, or the elements of failure, which is very interesting. Augie, I've known you for a year and a half. I don't think you've even come close to failing at anything I've seen you do.
Girls? How's that?
Girls. Girls, okay, that's one. Besides that, let's talk about the culture of failure, or the tolerance of failure. That's more of a Silicon Valley approach. Yeah. One of the things that created some commonality between Augie and me was that we both have that Silicon Valley experience. Augie's in Silicon Valley repeatedly, travels all the time. I lived in that part of the world for 12 years. So let's talk a little bit about tolerance of failure. So
forgiveness is an important concept in entrepreneurship. And it's something somewhat unique in the United States. Usually in other parts of the world, there is very low tolerance for failure, and that prevents people from taking risks. But here in America, and especially in places like Silicon Valley, and places like Gainesville, investors, colleagues, your peers are more willing to forgive your failures and trust that you learn from them and give you another shot. And that's something that no one should take advantage of here in the United States. We have that advantage over the rest of the world, and that is the ability for people to forgive your mistakes and trusting you to learn from them. In fact, like in Silicon Valley, there are websites dedicated to people's failures, and they proclaim them. I forgot the name of that website, but it's like a tombstone website where people post their failed companies. It's really comical, but it's almost, in Silicon Valley, it's almost a badge of honor how many companies you've actually failed. But the joy of starting over again, and the drive to start over again, and the optimism starting over again is quite amazing, and what makes all this possible. It makes risk-taking possible. You cannot have big risk takers without people willing to forgive you, because the majority of the risks will fail. But the few that do make it are overwhelming successes, and people need to keep that in mind.
Just forward them to one person so that not everybody comes up, okay? That's a little bit disruptive. So just take your questions and just forward them maybe to Captain or to Justin, and then they'll pass it on to me, okay? Thank you. I do expect questions. For the Edge students, unfortunately you're unable to ask questions that I will then ask Augie, but for the in-class students, please write your questions down with your name and the date, and I will work those into today's conversation. So back to the failure part. I hear you. I hope that a course full of very successful, high-achieving Gator engineers understand what you're saying. I do. We'll find out from the audience later, if they buy into your concept of the embracing of the failure part. However, you're a unique individual because like it has been said of Wayne Gretzky, the hockey star, who skated to where the puck is going. That's what you do, Augie. You are ahead of where that trend is taking us. So you have this uncanny ability to maybe look failure in the face and smile at it. Whereas a person like me looks failure in the face and I quiver. So how do I become more courageous and start to see where the puck's going?
I guess it's.
Is that just
Well,
is that nature or nurture?
It's just it's both. I mean, part of it is, you know, when I was a college student, I lived off ramen, and I was quite happy just living off ramen. And so, like, financial failure, I don't really care because I could live off ramen and be happy still, as long as my work is interesting.
And your work is interesting, and many of the questions that have been asked already relate to how you perform as a manager, an entrepreneur, yes, a visionary, a leader, an innovator. So you have multiple projects ongoing or very near operating.
Yeah.
You have 2 companies of which you are the CEO, Tone Right and Trendy Entertainment. How do you do it?
Talent acquisition. That's very important. The ability to spot talent, smell talent, almost. One thing I've learned is you can't do everything yourself. It's nearly impossible.
But aren't you a control freak? I mean,
that's one thing you need to learn to sort of let go of, especially if you want to do many projects at once. If you just have one company, you can be somewhat a control freak. But if you start diversifying, like I have, you have to sort of find the right talent, nurture them, and trust them. Sometimes it'll come back and bite you. But if you choose the right people, they become a productivity multiplier.
Well, I tease Augie about being a control freak because he is the opposite. He believes in people, and he is always available to assist an entrepreneur, whether that intrapreneur is acting within one of his companies or it's a person who's outside of the companies but has entrepreneurial aspirations. Like me, I believe, I would say that Augie is like me in that we just can't stand entrepreneurs. We want people to get involved, to be the pig and not the chicken, be committed and not just, okay. So but I have to go back to your rigorous training as a gator engineer. How do you create, what's the development plan for some of these technologies? How do you make them commercial? How do you acquire talent? How do you build a team? You must be using some playbook of sorts.
Well, I just be myself.
You be yourself.
It's enthusiasm. It's addictive. People get addicted off your enthusiasm. You attract talent that way as well.
Do you think you can only attract good talent, or you must have made some stumbles?
Of course, I've in the past attracted bad talent and had to let go of bad talent. But yeah, it's part of the learning process of weeding out the bad from the good. I guess the most important part really is genuine enthusiasm for what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish, and that will attract the right kind of people.
Mm-hmm. And what you do in the workday is somewhat representative of who you are. You're an ethical person. You're hardworking, ambitious, determined, very capable. You're always reading something, or I'm always hearing of you describing something new, or so. Again, how do you find that? Do you have a 24-hour day, or is yours a little bit longer? How do you find the time?
Well, I'm always reading.
You're always reading.
If I'm not like doing emails or in a meeting, I'm always like reading technology blogs, just keeping informed. And it stems from not like wanting to do well. I generally find that those things really interesting, and that's what I like to do. And then on top of that, you know, it's another big thing I like to stress is, you know, rallying the troops. You know, I'm willing. I go to every office room and I talk to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, the technology director, or you're the QA tester. Like, I will talk to everyone every day and just see how they're doing and see where they're at and see if they're happy. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure everyone's happy.
So you're a good communicator, and but you know, maybe the stereotypical engineer is not known for being a good communicator. Maybe he or she just sits in their cubicle and does their work, or doesn't particularly ask a lot of open-ended questions. I know I've been with you in business meetings, and the only type of questions I hear out of your mouth are open-ended questions. So how you transitioned? I don't suppose.
Yes, I used to be a really quiet, introverted engineer. All I want to do is write code, and that's it. I just, whatever happens outside of my cubicle or desk, I just did not care. I guess what the transition was seeing the joy that came out of this work that I did, especially with ToneWrite. It was like I invented this product, and, you know, I commercialized it, and then I just saw like how happy people were from the product. I would get fan mail, and people were like, "Thank you for inventing this. It's been so amazing." And it just sort of broke my shell, I guess. So if you're an engineer and you're creating amazing products, you know, talk to the people that are using them and find out really how much joy they're extracting from it. And that's a huge motivator, huge motivator.
What Augie's referring to, the fan mail, I am not a musician, but I became a fan once I read an article about ToneWrite in the New York Times. It was published on a Monday morning. I'll never forget this. Probably a year and a half or so ago, I had heard of Augie. Maybe I had bumped into him once before, and then all of a sudden I see this article in the New York Times, and it was, you know, it wasn't a fluff piece. There was a lot of substance behind it. And I remember thinking, that's here in Gainesville, Florida? This is going to get worldwide circulation. And indeed, you do have sales from around the globe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
34 countries.
34 countries. So here in Gainesville, Florida, or for our colleagues in Edgeland, you know, for wherever you are, small or large town America, you have entrepreneurs and innovators like Augie Lai who are making it happen based on probably the skills that acquired as a Gator engineer. So couple questions, and the audience is doing a great job here of giving some fabulous questions and topics around it. So I'll just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to sort of machine gun some questions at you. When do you know how to pull the plug on something that might be looking like a failure, or that you know is registering a failure, or that it's just not going the way you want it to go? How do you pull that plug?
Oh, there's many different facets. One's definitely financial. Like, how much is this project costing us? Second is looking at the consumers, like the potential of this product. Another big thing is the team. How willing are they to complete this product? It's a really tough question, but there have been several instances where I had to do that on projects.
And I know from conversations that you and I have had, late night conversations, have a cup of coffee or a beer over the weekend and talk about this. You've had to ask your team to go without pay or to have their pay delayed. That had to be a very difficult conversation.
Absolutely. Every startup goes through that.
Yeah, every time. Yeah. So here we're talking about some of the challenges that Augie and his team have faced just in terms of being an entrepreneurial venture. But I like to also offer this. How do you define success?
People are happy. You know, I think the greatest compliment that I've had is not, oh, your products are great, blah, 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 you're smart, whatever. It's having an employee walk up to you and say, this is the best job I've ever had. That gives me more joy than anything. So it's about the people, really. It's not about the profit or the product. No, it's about the product. But it's about the people. The people is what matters.
So the people matter. I have seen you in action in leading your company, socially or professionally. If you have attended a startup hour here in Gainesville, you've seen the camaraderie that Augie and his team have, and their position at the bar at one of these events is legendary. But seriously, you're looking at a great number of companies interested in what you do. Probably no more so than what you've created at Trendy Entertainment. Can you share some of the, nothing proprietary, nothing confidential, but can you share a little bit about why Trendy is so special and why it has attracted such remarkable interest from the industry?
Well, the video game industry is filled with sharks. It really is. I've never seen an industry so packed full of money-hungry sharks that look for talent and exploit them. And it's quite incredible because what you have is a group of engineers and artists that are so passionate about making games. And then you have, on the other side, a lot of money. And what happens in a situation like that is you'll have people that control a lot of the money try to take advantage of people that are only interested in creating their art. And in an environment like that, it's very common to see, amazing studios that create amazing work, and all of a sudden everyone's laid off, just for that extra profit margin, or whatever. At Trendy, what we created was an environment that put the engineers first, and everyone feels like that. It's not about, hey, we're management, we're just going to mistreat you and just take all the profits and lay everyone off. No, we're here because we believe in your art, we believe in your work, and we're going to try our hardest to make sure everyone's taken care of and appreciated. That's very important, appreciate it. And when you create an environment like that, or you create an environment like that in any startup, you start attracting amazing talent, so it almost self-propagates. And word gets out that this is an amazing company with an amazing work environment. I want to work for them. So talent acquisition gets easier and cheaper too.
I'd like to share a personal experience on this. Augie and I met recently, and we talked about some situations, and I asked, well, what's your thought about going forward? Sounds very attractive. And without missing a beat, he said, it is not best for my employees. And it was a pretty big number that we were talking about. So I thought, wow, this is, it's very easy to talk. It's much more difficult to walk. And Augie is definitely putting his reputation behind very ethical guy. So this is sort of a little bit of a segue to a lot of the questions are coming from the audience about, does Augie, how does he fund all of this, and how does he pay for it, and what happens, and he's a very likable person, and all right, so you must be a real rich guy. You're just writing checks for all these projects. So what's going on?
Well, definitely none of this would have been possible without the help of angels.
Angel investors.
Angel investors, very important for an startup ecosystem. People like you, people like Ken McGurn, people like Richard Allen. It's very crucial that there's fertile soil for startups to grow from. And in Gainesville, we're starting to see that fertile soil being imported And it's an exciting time because Gainesville's always had the seeds. Gainesville's always had the talent. And now we're starting to see the right kind of soil come in to fertilize, to nurture these startup companies. And none of the things I've done would have been possible without the help of angels like so.
So what does an investor see in a visionary, innovative, entrepreneurial Gator engineer? What are they looking for?
Passion.
Passion.
Very important. That's what they look for. That's more important than anything. Because if you truly have passion, the barriers just come down. Like, oh, that's going to require a lot of time. That barrier is the first thing that comes down. Oh, that's going to require a lot of devotion, et cetera, et cetera. Like, if investors look for passion in what you're doing, that you truly 100% believe in what you're doing, and you're willing to go the distance on what you're pitching.
Without that passion, do you think it's possible to succeed and fail, to attract talent, to patent your technologies, to bring them to market without passion?
You can't do anything without
Can't do
passion,
it.
especially in the startup world.
Yeah.
You could join a Fortune 500 and just be stuck in a cubicle,
Yeah.
passionless, but that'll be your life for the next 40 years.
Mm-hmm. So it is a conscious choice of you, by you, to follow your passion, to follow you inspire others. There are a lot of people in town who speak about Augi's passion and his commitment and dedication to doing things. Can you envision doing it any other way? Can you imagine yourself as that engineer in a cubicle? Not that there's anything wrong with that. Right?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. A lot of people are quite happy. They like the security of having a typical 9-to-5 job, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just some people like myself can't do that, would not thrive doing that.
Mm-hmm. Because another very strong concept in this course is not just following the innovator inside of you in an entrepreneurial environment, but also to follow the innovator who you are in a corporate environment, or if you're working in the military, working within the divisions of the various services. So how do you, as an entrepreneur, how do you advise us to be intrapreneurs?
In a bigger organization?
In a larger organization.
That's very difficult.
Is it harder doing that than
It's more harder.
It's harder doing that than being an entrepreneur?
I think so, because one thing what you find in larger entities and in the military is a lot of bureaucracy, and nothing stifles innovation and enthusiasm like bureaucracy. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to startups. They grow, and all of a sudden layers of bureaucracy starts building up, and innovation gets stifled because of that. In fact, a lot of innovation starts from the ground up. It comes from like an intern coming up with a cool idea. Say, hey, check out this cool idea. But if you have a structure in your company where that idea doesn't percolate to the top, it just gets squished. One thing I try to do in all my companies have very flat management. There's only 2 layers. There's top guys, like directors, and then everyone else. And with a structure like that, innovation gets to the top immediately. Like an example is like, anyone can talk to me. I talk to everyone every day, so if they have an idea, it gets straight to me. So to address your question, how do you become an intrapreneur? I don't know. I've never been in that situation. So, in fact, I've sort of been in a situation with an internship, and I did not like it. So that's one reason I did not ever want to be part of a big company.
Well, Augie's answer regarding of how creativity percolates or how it's encouraged and maybe sought after and then moves or percolates up is a very telling answer. It's been something that each of you, whether you're an edge student or you're an on-campus student, has asked me, how do you get creativity operating in your company? Now, Augie just said something very important about the flat management for his company. You also have an acronym that you've taught me about. Is that SMART, S-M-A-R-T? Is that
SLAM.
SAM, I'm sorry.
SLAM, so
Sorry.
it's a small, low overhead adaptive management.
Small, low overhead, adaptive management, SLAM. And these are, as you say, Augie is a voracious reader. So he's reading about these things, he's modifying them to apply it in his own environment, sees how you probably do a lot of trial balloons, test management theories. You're constantly talking to people. You're a good communicator. Your skill that I have found over the months that I've known Augie is he's a better listener than he's a talker. And he listens, like I say, twice as much as he speaks. I believe all of those are ingredients to why you're successful as an entrepreneur. But you're not fabulously rich, so how successful are you?
Come back to me at the end of the year.
No, I tease Augie about that because I guess you've probably figured out in the 45 minutes or so that we've been speaking to Augie Lai, he's not about making money, although that's nice. He's about making meaning. This is a theme that we have talked about in the course, making meaning over money. But you have bills to pay, you have payroll to meet, you have trips to take, so you definitely need to build a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Trendy and the game-changing aspect that Trendy provides in the industry. What's Trendy's business model? Let's do Trendy Entertainment first and then talk about publishing. There's two companies now, the Trendy Publishing is the sister company, is that fair to say that, or a subsidiary company?
Sister company.
Sister company. So let's talk about the business model behind a game-changing video game company.
Well, I mean, the business model for Trendy Entertainment is digital distribution. In the last 20 years, the primary way of getting product to market is on store shelves. You sell disc on the store shelf, retail games, $60 retail games. That has been the tradition for the last forever. And it's flawed. There are 3 or 4 middlemen, they take profits from it, and by the time the studio gets a cut, there's hardly any profit left. If you're lucky, you get 20% out of that. And those games take $20 to $30 million to produce, another $30 to $40 million to market, and you're looking at a turnaround time of 4 to 5 years. The system's broken.
4 to 5 years for the payback.
Yeah.
Return on investment.
Return on investment. And that model is sick, is dying, it's not sustainable. That's why EA hasn't pulled a profit in like 3 or 4 years. What Trendy Entertainment's doing is digital distribution. In the last three years, markets have arisen: iTunes, Android market, XBLA, PSN network, where a developer can go straight to the consumer, publish their games, self-publish their games, and instead of only taking less than 20%, take over 75%, more in some cases. And that is the business model that we're following. And from the very beginning, like, we identified that as the way to go. That is the future. Digital distribution, direct download. That's where video games will be sustainable, because it is a very expensive process to make a game.
Does the industry hear this call from you, or are you bringing this concept to the market as a revolutionary?
The industry is starting to wake up to it. You look at major publishing companies, EA, Activision, whatever, they're starting to realize, yes, the retail model is sort of dying, not profitable, and they're starting to try to move their legs around and go a different direction. And it's very difficult for a large organization to make that shift. One advantage of being a startup, you can move very fast. You can shift very fast. You don't have the layers of bureaucracy that cements you down to your current business model. And it's one advantage of being a startup. So I guess that's Trendy's advantage as opposed to some of the bigger publishers. We can move very fast. We can adapt very fast. In fact, I'll give you an example of one ways we adapted very fast. Last August, our publisher for our XBLA version went bankrupt. And the whole game got delayed 6 months. The game was done. The whole game got delayed 6 months, and we were like, what do we do now? Well, since we're a small startup and we don't have a lot of bureaucracy to go through, we were like, all right, let's do something so we can bring in money before we run out of money. And that was to port our game to the iPhone and to Android. And we did in 2 months what no one else has ever done. We took a full console game for the Xbox and PS3, ported to iPhone and Android, and had it out by Christmas. And that pretty much sustained the company.
The Christmas, the August 2010 to December 2010 timeframe that Augie speaks of, something occurred right around Christmas. I remember this vividly because Augie called me and told me about this. But it started in overseas markets, I believe, and it was.
Yeah.
So you spoke of the digital download as a new mechanism. So what happened? I believe it was Japan that rated.
Well, it's when we released our game on the Android market, it stayed #1 on the charts for a few days. And what's interesting, it was very popular in Asia. Like, there was a fanatical following in Asia. The iPhone version cracked top 25, and it was literally the first console game ported to a mobile platform. It was just getting a lot of praises, just a daring to do anything like that massive.
That success gave you some further encouragement that this approach for the business model and the financial model was on the right path.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So here you are, and I know this again because you mentioned being nimble and being able to adapt the company to do different things. I know that there are projects within the company. So you saw the success of Angry Birds.
Yes.
And so what did you do to try to emulate that concept?
So my pet project this year was to create a casual game studio within sort of sister to Trendy. Trendy Entertainment will always be hardcore console games with like that can be ported to iPhone and mobile devices. But in the last few years, there's these smaller social games that could be made with like teams of 3 or 4 that have the potential of making a lot of money. But you don't know which ones are going to be a success. It's like you'll make 10 games and one game will be an amazing success and the rest will sort of flutter around. So the key in doing that is to just create a ton of games as fast as possible, and then throw them against the wall and see which ones stick. And that sort of spurred the creation of Trendy Publishing. And under Trendy Publishing, there's a casual game studio called Puppy Punch Productions. And there's going to be a launch this month. In the next 2 months, there are going to be 3 games launching. And it's very exciting. We went from February from no one to a full dedicated team, full art and tech pipeline, producing about a game a month. And we will be able to sustain that for the foreseeable future with this small team, about 8.
And that is a casual game studio, whereas if somebody said to me about the success of Angry Birds, I might say, well, that's pretty cool. I'll just figure out how to play the game a little bit better and they can enjoy their success. Augie goes out and creates a casual game studio. So you can tell the difference in the way that he and I think. Remarkable. So you've created these casual games because you saw an opportunity, but you rapid prototype these games because it's important to know if it has the elements of success. Is that right? So if you were working in a more traditional engineering environment, perhaps at a large corporation, or you're working in a military division, rapid prototyping might be the way that someone could be kind of channel their inner entrepreneur or intrapreneur.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll give you another example. When I was working at Peoria, what got me into vision processing was I rapidly prototype an algorithm. We were working on a problem called object avoidance. And this in particular was the ability for a plane to see a tree and then fly around it. But the ability for a computer system to see a tree is very, very, very complex. And there were a number of people working on it for years. And I remember at that time I was doing another project. I was working on a chemical weapons detector. And it was a windy day outside, and I was just staring outside, looking at the trees and seeing how they flutter in the wind. And it just sort of hit me like how to solve that problem. And I went to my manager at the time, which was Amir Rubin, and I said, I have an idea. Not a crazy idea, it might just work. And he was like, sure, on your spare time, just try it. And I spent 6 hours coding it up, and in the 6 hours I had a working demo, working in MATLAB, doing my algorithm in real time. And they took that algorithm, and we spent the next 2 months porting it for their plane in time for a big show, AUVSI, big aerospace show for robotics. And that's how I got my start in vision algorithm. So
your imagination, you let your imagination run wild by looking at the wind in the trees.
Yeah, just like, I wasn't staring for a long time. I was just glancing, and just sort of just hit me.
Yeah. The students in this class are tired of me talking about look up at the sky to get some inspiration, or let your creativity go wild, or take a different path home someday, or talk to the people that don't look like you, or hang out with art people and musicians and make it happen.
Yeah.
You're living proof of that.
Okay, I'll take it.
You've also, let me just take as they say in entrepreneurial circles, companies need to pivot. You continuously pivot. Any of the companies you've worked on. Let's talk a little. I'm going to pivot here, and you are a tireless booster of Gainesville, our innovation and our entrepreneurial initiatives. Why Gainesville, Augie?
I think Gainesville could be the next big tech hub of the United States. I see all the right elements. The talent's already there. The university attracts all this amazing talent. The innovation is there. Once again, the university provides an immense amount of innovation. And in the last few years, the right kind of soil is coming in the form of angel investors and venture capital firms. And the time is right now for Gainesville to really blow up in a good way. And I'm just the product of what's been going on in the last few years.
Augie speaks of the type of interest that Gainesville has attracted in the last 2 years, whether it's a formalized program that's endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce called Innovation Gainesville, to people in the community who believe in what this is all about, to investors, because let's be honest, it doesn't move forward unless you have some form of capital, whether you come with your own, or you can pay people with smiles a lot, but you still need to get some capital. And so we have institutional investors in this town. Most recently, a company out of Memphis, Tennessee, by the name of Duncan Williams, and that's an investment bank that has established its Florida statewide operations headquartered in Gainesville. So even though you might have thought me to be an unabashed person from the Chamber of Commerce talking about Gainesville, Augie adds credibility to my statements by saying that Gainesville really has attracted this type of an ecosystem, another term and concept that you've heard spoken quite a bit. So you've created your own ecosystem because very successful. Just the numbers are staggering each and every month, called Startup Hour. Tell us about Startup Hour.
So Startup Hour is basically an event once a month, third Thursday of the month, where all the techies, all the entrepreneurs.
What's the nickname for Startup Hour?
No, Nerds Night Out.
Nerd Night Out.
Nerds Night Out. And we just go to a downtown bar and share ideas. There's usually free beer, which helps. And it's just a celebration of innovation. And it's infectious. And innovation, entrepreneurship is very infectious. And in an environment like a bar, it hits like a critical mass. And you can smell it in the air. It's really amazing. And it went from me and Ted Astleford just saying, hey, let's, we see these things in Atlanta and Silicon Valley. They'll have these little tech parties. And like, there's nothing like that in Gainesville. We should start one. And it started at Stubby's, and it was the first night, 30 people showed up. And we're like, wow, this is a lot of fun. And then the next one, 50 people show up. And the next one, 70 people show up. And sooner or later, we realized there were like 120 people coming out to these things.
And people from out of state. I think at one point we had someone from Italy threatening to visit, or maybe no, I'm sorry, that was separately. That was for TEDx, but there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, like VCs from San Francisco, Dallas, Cincinnati were coming down.
Imitation is the best form of flattery, and our friends in Tallahassee, under the moniker of Silicon Tally, they've created what is called Startup Round, and so they believe in what Augie and Ted Astleford, who's from the University of Florida, has created with Startup Hour. Third Thursday of the month, everyone's invited. You don't need to be a nerd to attend.
No, you can be a girl too.
You can be a girl too to go to attend. Augie, I want to just make this a little bit personal because many of the questions here from the audience are inquiring about your personal journey. Without making it too personal on your side, tell us about this personal journey that you're on.
Personal journey. What do you mean?
I mean, you have for as long as I've known you, it's not been about the destination. You're more interested in the journey. I think that
definitely.
the journey for you is the reward.
That's right. It's not about the outcome. It's the enjoyment of the work, enjoyment of hard work, and that should be true to every engineer thinking about it. It's not finishing the project. It's the joy of doing the project. And if you extract joy from doing the project, you will always be happy. It doesn't matter the outcome, if you fail or not. You enjoy the life of creating. And that's what entrepreneurship, it's not about I'm doing my job. It's about creation. I'm creating something no one else has created. And if you can extract joy from the act of creating, then you'll always be happy.
Mm-hmm. Happiness is personal happiness, others being happy, seeing a community empowered by what innovation and entrepreneurship can mean to us in this town and in this region. That is very contagious. And again, I know that you to be one of the most vocal and consistently upbeat about not just what could be, but maybe why it must be. I mean, I don't believe you can envision a world that wouldn't be energized, enthusiastic, upbeat, optimistic. You can overcome just about anything. Strikes me as maybe you're having little problems with girls, but who doesn't, right? So it's been about a process of your own evolution from an engineer, from just an engineer,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that disrespectfully, to a visionary. What does the immediate future have in store for you, or for technologies that are trending, or that what Augi, the next chapter, could be after, could be seeking?
It's really what the wind blows.
You like to look in those trees and watch the wind,
Yeah,
right?
see what blows my way, and life is about timing, and being able to jump at the right time on a project is very important. So just keep my mind open. What's the next big thing that interests me?
You travel quite a bit. You're engaged in numerous conversations with technology leaders, investors, and you are constantly in communication. Do you hear things out there that might be the next wave that's building offshore? That's something that you can share with us, because that's just something you don't want to pursue.
I mean, the technology that's innovating faster than any other sector, there's literally like doubling in power and capability. Every 6 months, our mobile devices, like this thing right here, these things double in speed and complexity every 6 months.
So that's trumping the Moore's Law of 18
It's destroying Moore's Law.
Yeah.
And on top of that, people are buying them.
Yeah.
And there are cell phones out there right now that have dual core chips that are more powerful than your typical PC 3 years ago. And end of this year, they're going to be quad core mobile phones, almost ludicrous. But with that quad core, you can play amazing games.
Amazing games produced and distributed by Trendy Entertainment and Trendy Publishing, which both together are going to be unbelievably impactful in the industry. So when I met you, I didn't think that you were a revolutionary, but as I've got to know you over time, I can definitely attest that you are a revolutionary. We're very glad that you're part of Gator Engineering and that you're a member of the growing of what we have here in Gainesville. As is our style in the course, we have what is called an idea pad, not to be confused with an iPad. So on behalf of the class, I'd like to give you your very own idea pad, and what we do with that is maybe for you, when you're looking in the trees and trying to get your ideas thought, just capture them on the old-fashioned way, on paper and pen. And then also, just as a thank you from us, because we know that you're very proud to be a Gator engineer. This T-shirt is a shirt that shows of 100 years of Gator engineering, in which we celebrated recently in the College of Engineering.
Thanks.
So you've been great to have here, Augie. Thank you for this. I just think we really enjoy having you in this town, and it's great to have you part of the College of Engineering family, and hope you'll come back to see us again.
Definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Augie Lai. We'll take a break, and I'll tell you what our next steps will be. Thank you.